Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining our lunch lab today. I'm Sally Delisle, co-owner and director of trainings at ChildLight Education Company, where our mission is providing wellness education to create happy, healthy, and resilient youth and families. Today, we are talking with Lisa Stevens regarding the business of bookkeeping, and perhaps at some point, we will answer your BBBQ, your biggest business burning questions. Lisa came up with that, so we shall see. This is actually part one of a two-part series. And I'd like to start with a brief introduction of Lisa, and then she will take you through the importance of bookkeeping, a glossary of terms, and get us started on this whole introduction and the process. So Lisa, take it away. Please let us know all about yourself.
Thank you, Sally. So my name is Lisa Stevens, and I am the accounting manager with ChildLight Education Company. I have been with ChildLight since 2018, and I have been bookkeeping since 2016. I always like to clarify at the beginning that I am not a CPA. So any tax-related questions that you might have, I know we do get a lot of those, you'd want to bring that either to your accountant or your tax advisor.
Thank you. That's very good advice. It's good to know that right in the beginning. So Lisa, what got you into this?
Well, it was a little bit haphazard. I ended up getting a job as an office manager, and they needed some additional bookkeeping support. I did not have a background in that, but I was very lucky to be trained by the financial director, who was amazing. And basically, I got free courses, I would say plural, in bookkeeping, and found that I really loved it.
We are so grateful for you here at ChildLight. I grew up with a dad that's a CPA and very mathematically inclined. So is my husband. I am not mathematically inclined. So I'm going to learn a lot today along with everyone else. What have you prepared for us?
Well, let me go ahead and share my screen with you. I've got a PowerPoint that will kind of take us through this part one discussion.
Great, thanks.
Okay. So here we are today, the business of bookkeeping. And today is part one. So keep in mind, we will go through some things today, but there will be a second portion to this, as it's too much to pack into 1 hour. So a big question for new business owners is how and why is it important for me to manage my finances? How do I do it, and why is it important? Well, there's a lot of reasons it's important, but these are the top 6 reasons that I think it's important. So in bookkeeping, we track expenses and revenue. So this is very important, right? Because you want to know what's coming in revenue wise, what you're making money on, what you're selling, what you're not. And then also your expenses. What are you spending your money on? What are your high expense categories? Where are you not spending a lot of money? Those are very, very important things to know as a business owner. And we talk about the management of money, right? So the actual money going in and out of the bank account. How do we manage that? How do we make sure that we know when an expense is going to hit? How do we know when the deposit hits? So we need to be very familiar with what's going on in our bank account on a daily basis. And along with that goes your credit card. Should you have a business credit card, you need to be very familiar with the transactions, because these are going to be expenses for your business. And then another thing that's very important, bill payments. So what bills are coming in? When will you pay them? You know, uh, are you going to pay them? Can you pay them right away? Are you waiting for a big check to come in? Um, so that's something that I feel is very important. It's important to know how to invoice your clients and your customers. This is the way money is going to come in. So you have to know how to properly invoice them and make sure they're receiving that invoice and then paying it in a timely manner. So everybody we know gets nervous around tax time, right? You're scrambling to get your things together. Well, hopefully, if you've been able to manage and track your finances throughout the year, it's not so bad when you're gathering everything to give it to your accountant. And that's really the goal, that when your accountant says, okay, what's happened this year, you can provide them with those things fairly easily and answer questions that they may have. And then finally, inventory tracking. If you are selling products, this has to be done yearly. Those numbers are also something your accountant is going to ask for. So it's very, very important that you are tracking your inventory at least yearly, if not more frequently. So those are some of the things that we look at and say, okay, that's really important for my business.
Lisa, looking at that list that you just shared with us
Mm.
is bringing back so many memories of when I first started teaching and sharing yoga.
Mhm.
And I honestly had forgotten what I used to do as far as bookkeeping. You have completely changed my world.
Oh,
As far as invoicing customers, it was all by hand at one point. I would hand write the invoices in a little um, note. It was one of those notepads that made duplicate copies. Do you remember those? I don't even know
yeah,
if they still make them.
absolutely. I remember. Yep.
Yes. And as far as taxes, I would be plugging things into my calendar, usually by hand. I would have it in my pocketbook or in my yoga bag, and I
Yep.
would be writing down, okay, I just spent this, or I just did this for mileage. And then eventually I would use my typewriter until I got a computer and I would have to type it all up. Uh, but I would wait until November, December, end of January. And every year I would say, okay, I'm going to do it monthly. And that would last until perhaps March. And then I would just fall off and then panic in December or January and have to go back and gather all the information in my notebook or in my handwritten calendar. So doing it now monthly and tracking it with the software that you use now, or whatever software people um, use, it makes life so much easier. And yoga as work, it is a business. And I know for me in the past, I really cringed over that, thinking yoga is a business, but it is our job and we are worthy of being paid. And this is an important part of the whole aspect of it.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Sally, so many people could identify with that in your position. It's just, it can be overwhelming. And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's easier to say, okay, let's put that off for now. But in the end, like you said, it just ends up getting more overwhelming, right? When you put it off. So,
It does.
absolutely.
You spend a whole weekend of your time trying to gather
Right.
materials when you could do it little by little every week
Exactly.
or every month or every day for that matter.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So actually, and when talking about every day, Sally, um, you know, what is the management of the day-to-day operations of your finances, your bookkeeping? What are you doing day to day? What's happening as far as your business finances? So some of the things that need to be managed day to day are banking, right? Your bank account, your business bank account. You need to be able to record income that comes in and also record any expenses that are coming in. Another very important piece, your accounts receivable. So, right, that's the money that you're expecting to come in, right? Whoever you've invoiced and sent the invoice, that's now in your accounts receivable waiting to be paid. And then you have your accounts payable, and that's where your bills are all stored. So you've received a bill, you've entered it, it's in your accounts payable, and you are going to need to be watching your accounts payable to know, okay, when is this bill due? When do I need to pay this bill? And then finally, another really important piece is record keeping. So I can enter, right? I could enter expenses, I can enter all of that. But if I don't have a receipt, or I don't have, maybe I didn't keep the original bill, I didn't upload it into my system, I might look back and say, okay, I know that I spent this money with X, Y, and Z, but what did I spend it on? What, I'm not sure what I spent it on. So it's very important to have a safe place for your receipts and a safe place for your bills, where you can look back and say, okay, I paid this bill last month on the 20th, and this is what it was for. Now, you don't have to do the old, okay, we're going to put it in a file. You can do, they've made it so easy for everything to be on the cloud now. You have so many choices. You can use Dropbox if you'd like. You can use a lot of different storage options. I don't even know them all. But they're here to help as far as a safe place and an organized place to keep your receipts.
Okay, that's helpful. And can you say one more time? Sorry, I keep pausing you there.
No,
Just
that's
for
fine.
everyone, accounts receivable is, and accounts payable is.
Yep. So accounts receivable, that's the money that you are expecting to come in. So your accounts receivable is anything you've invoiced. Okay, you have a client that you are teaching for 2 days per week for the entire month. Okay, and you've already invoiced that client, but they're not going to be paying until the end of the month when the services have been rendered. So what you do is you have that's holding in your accounts receivable, but that money is coming in. So you can look at your accounts receivable report and know, okay, I have that money coming in, I'm waiting for it, and track, if it's late, all that sort of thing.
Okay.
So that's your income. Your accounts payable are your expenses. So when you enter the bills, they go into your accounts payable and then they're paid. So really, accounts receivable is income, accounts payable is expenses.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we can touch on banking in a little bit more, depth, more in depth. So bank deposits, right? So you're going to be making bank deposits. An important thing that I like to recommend, and again, it's only a suggestion, but you should open your own business bank account for your business. It should really be separate from your personal account. Things could get very convoluted. It might be hard to say, oh, this was a business deposit, this was a personal deposit, or this was a personal expense, this is a business expense. So in order to keep things really kind of buttoned up and organized, you're going to want to open your own business account that is solely for your business. Another part of banking, right? Recording checks, okay, or expenses. So sort of managing the incoming and outgoing transactions. So if you write a check or pay a bill, you need to be recording that you've done that, okay? You don't want to look at your bank statement at the end of the month and see a check and not remember what it was for, right? Or have it clear your bank account and you weren't expecting that. And that can be a little bit stressful, right?
Mhm.
You also need to manage your incoming transactions. What deposit did you just receive? Was that a payment for an invoice? If it wasn't you making the deposit, what is that money coming in and where does it belong? And then bank and credit card reconciliations. So each month you're going to get your bank statement, your business bank statement. And should you choose to have a business credit card, you're also going to get your business credit card statement. Very important that those are reconciled monthly. Um, it's just if you keep on top of it, it's a great thing to do. And then you're not at the end of the year looking back and trying to figure out which expenses go where. That can be very tricky if it's been a couple of months. So you really want to do that each month. And you need to make sure, because if you're not reconciling your bank account, you're not sure which checks went through, or did I really just receive that deposit? I can't remember. So really important to stay on top of those things. Okay. So we really did, we kind of talked about the definition of accounts receivable and accounts payable, um, but just a little bit more of an overview. So accounts receivable, what you're doing, you're invoicing clients and collecting payment. Okay. Um, when you do this in accounting software, if you're choosing to use accounting software, you're going to need to set up sort of a product and services for your invoice. If you offer services and products or just services, you need to make sure when the money comes in that it's going to go to the correct income account. We'll probably get into that more in depth in part two, but it's just sort of just a little sort of teaser about that. Now, along with invoicing clients and collecting payment, are you going to accept credit cards and debit cards? Would you prefer just to accept checks? So these are things to think about. Credit cards and debit cards, credit cards do incur fees. So it's something to think about in your choice of what you'd like to accept for forms of payment.
And now there are so many different forms of payment that you can accept too, right? So you can
Absolutely.
use Square and PayPal and Venmo. And I
Mhm.
know Venmo now is in some areas anyway, they're going to start charging tax
I
uh,
believe so.
for
Yep.
vendors. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's nice that there are so many options now.
Right. Right. There's a lot of options. And so it's a good thing to research when you're thinking about how you're going to collect payment. What's going to work for you, what's going to work for your customers.
Hmm.
So if we talk about on the other side, the accounts payable, that's really where you're entering your bills. Um, and when you're entering your bills, we talked about this also. Goes right along with the record keeping. Um, if you're using a software program where you can attach the receipt um, and the bill marked paid, that is so helpful. Or somewhere you can do that. If you're not going to use software and you're going to have an accounts payable file or whatever's going to work for you, but if you keep your receipts and keep your vendor bills in an organized fashion, again, it's so much easier as you go through the year when you're looking back. If you need to look back and say, where did that expense come from, type of thing.
And you will be sharing with everyone what we use and how you organize it, right?
I will. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And so falling into record keeping a little more on this. So things you would keep, right? Things that you would keep for tax purposes, for your business records. You're going to want to keep receipts from purchases. You want to keep vendor bills. You want to have invoices that you've sent out. You need to have a record of that. And importantly, tax documents. Anything you receive from the IRS, If you have payroll, if you're dealing with payroll, there's a lot of tax documents that need to be organized and kept. And I know, I don't remember, but there is a time period, and you can easily find that on the internet, a time period of how long you need to keep these records, I think. Or you can ask your accountant, they will know.
I think the last time I heard it's 7 years
That sounds right.
and they need to be locked up.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. There's confidential information, all kinds of stuff in there.
Mhm.
And we talked about how will you store these documents for ease of access and organization. You'd really, as the business owner, you need to figure out what's going to work best for me. Do I want to get a cloud service where I can store things in the cloud? Would I prefer to have it on paper? There's not really a right or wrong. It's maybe what works for you, and the size of your business comes into play as well when you're dealing with that. How many expenses do you have per month? So you can think about those things, but there needs to be a way that you can easily access these things if you need them and when you need them. So that kind of dovetails into the idea of accounting software. So if your choice is, okay, I don't think I can do this by hand. This is a lot to organize. And, rightly so, absolutely. You might choose to purchase a software package to assist with the organization of your books. This can be especially helpful for tracking everything that you're going to need to handle for your year-end taxes, as well as to maintain a clear view of your business's financial health. Okay, right. So it's not just we're organizing things for tax purposes, right? We want to be able to pull a report or use this software to look and say, how is my business doing? What have I spent? What is my net profit? What income is coming in? And the great part about the accounting software is you can look at that over a period of time. Do you want to look at the last 6 months? Do you want to look year to date? But it's really helpful. And if you can't access that information, I think it's difficult to know how is your business doing, beyond what is your balance in the bank account. Now, personally, we use QuickBooks here at ChildLight. We find it fits our accounting needs. It has all the features that we need. But you may be different. There might be different things that you're looking for in software. Your business may have more or less employees. So because your needs may be different, it's really important to research what software will fit your needs. And again, it's always helpful to consult your accountant if you have questions about that. If you're not sure, what do I need? They can usually help you or possibly give you an idea of what you may need.
And not to give a big plug to QuickBooks, but are there different levels to QuickBooks?
So there are varying levels. There's a lower level, I believe. I know there's a mid-level, and then there is a higher tier. And there may even be more than that, because we haven't changed levels, so I'm not sure everything that's out there now. But you really need to look at, and I think that people from QuickBooks can help you if you have questions. But you really need to be able to see what are the things in each level. Do I need all those things? What reports do I need to pull? Am I doing payroll? Am I not doing payroll? And so you need to look at that. Obviously, you want to look at the expense, but you also need to look at what you need, because if it's not going to serve your needs, then you need to look at something else.
And there are so many different options out there for software. So this is just one that we found works for us. And there may be an option if you are a one person LLC business, not an LLC even. You're just doing your own personal bookkeeping.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. Thanks, Lisa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if we talk a little bit about accounting and sort of the major components, a lot of people have a question, sort of like a beginning question when they start getting the books together. Well, what is a chart of accounts? You've heard the term, but what is it? What does it really mean? So, a chart of accounts, or COA, is a list of the account names a business uses to label transactions and keep tabs on its finances. You use a COA to organize transactions into groups, which in turn helps you track money coming in and out of the company. So this helps keep us organized, right? With our expenses, our revenue, all that stuff. So, and then there's the question, well, okay, I now understand what the chart of accounts is, but what are these numbers that I see by the accounts, or do people use numbers? And traditionally, accountants can tell which account a transaction belongs to based on the first digit of the account number. Okay, so for example, here, the example is asset accounts for larger businesses are generally numbered 100 to 199, and liabilities are generally numbered 200 to 299. This helps keep the books organized. Now, if you're a small business, you might have a totally different numbering system. You don't, maybe because you're a smaller business, or like Sally said, you might be a one-man show. You don't need to worry as much about that. So you can keep it in mind, but if you are, like I said, a smaller business, you can follow your own numbering system. You don't even have to have a numbering system if you don't have that many accounts. So that's again a choice.
Would you give us just a few examples going back
Sure.
to the definition of chart of accounts
Yep.
of groups?
Sure. So in your chart of accounts, right, you're going to have your assets, okay, your inventory, things of that nature, your liabilities, okay, which your accounts payable liability, that's something you owe, or if you have a loan, that would be a liability. Then you've also got your expenses, okay, those are going to be in there. And you also have your income accounts. Those are all accounts that are part of the chart of accounts. There's also equity accounts. And really what the equity accounts are, that's your assets minus your liabilities. That's your equity.
Okay.
And we actually talk a little bit more about that here in the next section.
Account types. You were headed there anyway.
Okay. Headed that way. So assets, liabilities, and equity accounts are used to generate the balance sheet, which conveys the business's financial health at that point in time. So it's almost like a snapshot of your business on that day. Okay. And it's also used to convey whether or not you owe money, right? Your liabilities. Okay. So that's the balance sheet. Okay. That's another important term in accounting. And then you have your expense and revenue accounts. Okay. The expense and revenue accounts make up something called the income statement, or maybe people are more familiar with profit and loss. This provides an insight into a business's profitability over time. So you can look back at last year and pull a profit and loss and say, okay, what was my profit last year? Okay, your net income. And you can look at it over various points of time, a month, whatever you like. So these definitions, I have to give credit down here to nerdwallet.com, which I love the name. But they did a really great job explaining this. So I just let them explain it because
Right.
I like the way they explain it, and I think it's very clear.
Super. Yeah, that's really clear.
Okay, and then also, okay, so a little bit more about the assets, liabilities, and equities. So assets. any resource your company owns that provides value. Okay. Assets can include cash, your money in the bank, your accounts receivable, the things you've invoiced for that you're waiting to come in. That is an asset. Your inventory, all of your inventory is considered an asset. If you own any business equipment or business vehicles, those would be considered assets as well. Liabilities. Okay, that's any debt your company owes. So if you have a business loan, your accounts payable, taxes, anything of that nature, those are liabilities. Okay, and then we had talked briefly, I think, about equity. Equity, that's what's left after subtracting your liabilities from your assets. Okay, those can be stock accounts, those can be retained earnings accounts, but that's what's left. Okay, so those are things, again, those accounts you're going to see on your balance sheet report. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, and the revenue and expenses. Revenue, the money your business brings in from the sale of its goods or services. Revenue accounts may include the following: sales of products, services, and interest revenue. So again, you might sell products and also sell services. Important to distinguish in your accounts if it's a product income or services income. So you want to think about that. Some people just services, some just products, but you want to have both of those in your chart of accounts if you sell both. Expenses. All the types of money and resources a business spends in an effort to generate revenue. Okay? Business expenses, right? You're doing all of these things to try to succeed as a business, and we do have to pay out in order to do that, to get the money to come in. So to calculate your net income, you would subtract your expenses from your revenue. So expense accounts: payroll, rent, travel expenses, utility bills, contract labor. Okay, those are all things that you need to track and you need to have expense accounts for. So revenue expenses, you will find all of this, as we talked about before, on your profit and loss or your income statement. That's where you're going to see, and you can look at that over a period of time to see what was your revenue, what were your expenses, and then what is your net income when you minus the expenses from the revenue.
Something that comes up quite often for traveling yoga teachers is, okay, so I have this great opportunity to teach a class and it's 30 miles away.
Right.
So I am driving 30 miles. I'm teaching this 1-hour class and I'm traveling 30 miles home. So truly, I need to deduct the mileage, 60 miles from what I'm actually getting paid, and also think about the extra time, travel time, plus the planning time.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not always the pay that we think it is.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's, another reason why tracking expenses is so important. So you can look back and say, oh, I did spend that. I did spend that, in
Yes.
order to make that money that I just made.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because we can really end up in the red instead of the black if we're not paying attention, and then end up in a place that we don't want to be. And
Absolutely.
we do want to be of service. We do want to spread yoga and mindfulness as much as we can, but we also need to take care of ourselves and not end up in a spot that we don't want to be.
Absolutely. Very, very important piece. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here's a quick chart of accounts example. Now this is very small, but just to give you an idea, when you're looking at your chart of accounts, And again, we see here the balance sheet accounts that we talked about initially. The asset accounts, a reminder, the asset accounts are your cash, your inventory. Um, if you have any, your accounts receivable, right? The money that you've invoiced, those are considered assets. You have your liabilities on the balance sheet accounts, any loans you owe, okay? Um, your accounts payable, bills you owe. And then you have your owner's equity, okay? So we talked about the equity accounts as being your assets. Well, right. Your equity is your assets minus your liabilities. Okay. So we talked about those as being, your balance sheet accounts. Oops, sorry about that. And then the income statement we discussed, or profit and loss statement, the revenue accounts, and the expense accounts. So those are going to be all the types of accounts that are in your chart of accounts. Okay. And you'll have different amounts depending upon your business and what your needs are. So I found some free resources that I thought might be helpful as a small business owner who's looking maybe to get familiar with bookkeeping. Even if you choose that you want to hire a bookkeeper or somebody to help you, but just to be a little bit more knowledgeable and understand a little more about what's going on. The US Chamber of Commerce actually has a great site right here below. Here's the link, but 10 free accounting tools for your small business. I think that's pretty helpful. They are free, so take a look at that. And then really an intro to financial accounting course. This is free. And I would, it's hard to find free things these days. So just to give you a little bit of knowledge, you could take a look at that and just get some of the basics down.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lisa.
You're welcome. Okay, and for our wrap up today, what are the important takeaways? What are the things that we talked about that we want to remember and hopefully put to use? So as a business owner, it is important that you track and organize your financials to understand the financial position of your business and to provide all necessary information to your accountant for taxes purposes. So we talked about, right, these being the really, really important things. So if we're tracking our financials, if we're keeping an eye on things and we know what our expenses are, our revenue, then it makes it easier for us to understand what position our business is in. What is the financial health of the business? So that's really important. Also, again, we talked about how necessary it is to keep track of that, so you can provide that for your to your accountant. So when you get your taxes done, you're not running around and harried, and you feel confident in your information because you've been recording it all year long. So how to do that, right? That just hearing that, you're like, okay, that sounds great, but it's really overwhelming. I am so busy trying to handle my business. That's a 20-hour a day job right there. And now you want me to take care of all of this stuff too. That's understandably overwhelming. And if that's the case for you, you can always hire a trusted and knowledgeable person to do this for you. Absolutely. No shame in that game, right? If this is not your thing and you feel more comfortable having someone else do it, I totally recommend doing that. And again, finding somebody that's trusted, knowledgeable, all of those things are important. Now, just want to tell you to stay tuned for part 2. Okay, so part 2, we're going to explore the QuickBooks program, which is, again, the program that we use here at ChildLight. So we're going to do that because that's the program that I'm familiar with. and we're going to discuss how you can use that software to assist you in your business financial management.
Lisa, thank you so much. I appreciate all of this information. And if you wouldn't mind, you can finish sharing your screen.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I'll do that right now.
And also with part two, I'm hoping that we will have a guest or two join us that will have some questions for you. I know Kristen Santos has recently become an LLC small business, and she is full of new business questions. Did she have a mentorship with you already, or I know she's requested?
She did. We had a mentorship a few months ago, and she had mentioned that she had some more questions come up. So I was
Yes.
hoping to get those answered, I think.
Okay, so she may join us, and perhaps a few others if they can carve it out of their schedules. If anyone here viewing this today has questions for Lisa, you can reach out to her. Her email is lstevens, STEVENS, at childlightyoga.com. You can also reach any of us by emailing info@childlightyoga.com. You can find our website, childlight.educationcompany.com. We are on all the social channels, and we hope to see you in a class, workshop, or training soon. Thank you so much. And again, Lisa, thank you so much for all of this information. It can really be very overwhelming, and you're helping us to clarify quite a bit of information. So I appreciate you very much.
Well, thank you for having me, Sally. I always enjoy talking bookkeeping. So
Well,
until
I'm
next
glad
time,
you do.
I know I'm already excited for part two.
All right. Well, we will get to that recording soon. And thank you again. We'll see you all another time for our next lunch lab. Take good care.